Welcome to my special guest, Dr. Paulina Trevena.
That's
Trevena, who's joined me all the way from sunny Glasgow this morning. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk about lots of things today, and I'm really excited. I was going to do the drum roll as well, because having a doctor always necessitates a drum roll. Do you want to give the listeners and the audience a bit of a background? Who are you? What's your areas of interest, etc., etc.?
Sure, and thanks for having me.
No problem.
I'm really glad to be in a real studio. I never have, so this is something new. So hello everyone, my name is, I'm Paulina, or Dr. Paulina Trevena.
Formal versus informal, right?
Formal versus
yes,
informal. And my background is, so I'm a social scientist. I was a researcher at various universities for almost 18 years. And moved into hypnotherapy a few years ago.
Oh.
So now I describe myself as a hypnotherapist, mindset coach, and researcher.
Goodness, that's a lot.
Is it too much?
That's so social scientist and researcher.
Yeah.
Goodness. Okay, can we start there? Is that all right?
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
So social scientist to me sounds fascinating. So I'd love to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of that 18 years of research, that's a long time. I find that people either suit the academic world or they don't. You clearly do or did. Talk to us about that environment, the skills and the traits you need, and the passion that you must have to be in that world. Because it's a very strange world to me, the academic world. I don't belong there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's an interesting one. So one thing I'd say is that I actually stepped into the academic world by chance. I wasn't really planning to be an academic, but I was always really into education. So I've got 2 master's degrees and a PhD.
Now you're just showing off. Can I compete with a couple of my GCSEs? Is that all right?
I think I just didn't know where to stop and when to stop. And to be honest, I always had this ambition of having a PhD for no apparent reason at all.
Okay.
I mean, I'll come back to that in a moment, maybe, when I'll start speaking about the ADHD, because I think now in hindsight, I think it's connected.
You can join the dots now.
I can join the dots.
But you weren't able to at the time.
No, it was just an ambition I had, and it was like a mission. There was a lot of things happening during my PhD, like really difficult life experiences, and I kept going and going and going. And it took me almost 9 years to complete it. But I got there.
Well done. Perseverance, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Perseverance.
Yeah.
And as I say, I stepped into the academic world by chance, really, because of doing the PhD. My earlier degree was in linguistics, and I worked as a teacher of English as a foreign language for almost 10 years.
Because that accent, tell us how that accent's come to be.
That accent baffles everyone. So I'm originally from Guildford in Surrey.
Oh yeah, I immediately thought Guildford.
Yeah, I know. The moment I say that, people in the UK are like, "That's not a Guildford accent." So I lived there. So I'm a child of a mixed marriage in terms of nationality.
Okay.
So my dad was English, my mum was Polish. In the 70s, when I was born, that was really strange, because Poland was still a communist country. So you couldn't quite travel and meet people and so on. And we lived in England till I was 7, and then relocated to Poland. And at the time, you didn't have the same opportunities as you do now to speak English, to maintain the language. So I mainly maintained English through reading the Beano.
I love the Beano. Beano Dandy, close.
Yeah, because my dad basically, remained in England, and it was a kind of, now I know it's called a transnational marriage. So one parent is in one country, the other parent is in another country, or the family is just dispersed across countries. So I lost my kind of English accent.
Yeah.
And I moved back to the UK in my 30s and already had a bit of a off accent.
Goodness me.
And then I moved up to Scotland 10 years ago, and I think that's when my accent and intonation just went wild.
But the foreign language, English is a foreign language. That would make sense that you'd go and do that in the teaching capacity, and it was from teaching capacity that you went into that PhD, and then you ended up in the whole academic world. Right?
Yeah, kind of. So I was getting a bit tired of teaching English because it's you can do it in different ways, but it does have its limitations. Yeah. And at the same time, I'd always been interested in society, how society works, what motivates people, all these kind of systems. So I went into social sciences, and through that went on to do a PhD, at the same time teaching English just to keep my finances going. And then through doing my PhD, so I had a special interest in migration, in international migration.
Okay.
And I was actually researching how the impact of working way below your qualifications on Polish migrants working in London. So we're talking like people who have Masters of Science degrees in biology but are working as cleaners, which was happening quite a lot in the early 2000s, late 1990s.
I think it still happens today,
it
right?
Does,
you look at
absolutely.
different demographics, different geographies, and it still happens today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I was really interested in, how does this happen? Why does this happen? And how does it make you feel when you know that you're so capable, but you're cleaning toilets somewhere or working in a cafe?
Yeah.
It is frustrating. There are various kind of ways people manage to sustain their mental health, basically, while doing things like that.
Okay.
But that's how I got into migration research. And through that, I got in touch with a migration research center in Poland. Well, it's actually called the Center of Migration Research.
Okay.
And started working there. And then I relocated to the UK, started working at universities here, and continued in this area of specialization, international migration. And I then kind of moved a bit into other areas, like families or addiction studies. But my main area was international migration. And I think the thing many people don't realize about the academic world, and specifically about the academic world in the UK and other countries such as the US, that it is a very, very difficult work environment. Very difficult. So I'd been on fixed-term contracts for all these 18 years that I was working at universities. And,
so there's no surety of...
Absolutely not. About 50%, about 50% of people, of academics working in academia are on fixed-term contracts. Ooh. And the only academic pathway to a permanent job is to become a lecturer. It's very competitive. And I never wanted to become a lecturer. I have a passion for research. Yeah. Not that I don't have a passion for teaching. I taught for many years, but I was aware that lecturers work even harder than researchers. Wow. And that they have even more hats to wear. And that really terrified me. The thought of being on a number of committees, the thought of answering all the student emails and taking part in recruitment and having to generate money for the university.
It's a lot, right? It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is much more than people realize. And I think in general, we have this perception that academics are just sitting there, sipping their coffees and having,
that's honestly what I thought was happening, no?
It is it's stressful. Like being in corporate, but without the perks.
Wow.
That's how I describe it.
That does not sound good. That does not sound good.
No, and there's a lot of issues with mental health because people, and another thing is, it's a really high pressure environment, especially if you're working at the top universities, which I was working, Southampton University, Glasgow, University of Glasgow, they're all the so-called Russell Group.
Yeah.
Top class universities, and the pressure is really high, and everybody's overworked all the time. Like I know very, 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 I don't actually think I know anyone who's managing
that isn't.
Who's just managing the workload. So it's a really difficult work environment. And after a number of years, I just thought, that's it. That's me. I need to get out.
So but that's good, right? Because you recognise that you were personally reaching your own threshold.
Yeah.
And that was a conscious thing, and you've done something about it, right? So you come away from that. So the social science bit, and we'll talk about the deviation now away from academic, but the social science bit has always fascinated me because when I kind of see the world, and I think I view it in a very strange way compared to other people, right? And I think probably, there's similarities and why we got talking about lots of different things. But all around me, I see artificial, human-made constructs.
Yeah.
So, just to kind of emphasize that a bit, you've got a bit of land, and there's now a boundary in between, a natural planet, and there's a boundary in between, and that's called this country, and that's called that country, right? So it's kind of tribe stuff that has grown over millennia, which now means that this bit of land is recognized as one part. And just if you actually take a step back and think about that, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. The fact that another thing that I look at is, think about, I don't know, raspberries or blackberries growing on a bush, the natural abundance of the natural world. Somebody takes those raspberries, puts them in a container, and now they're going to charge you money for those things that are naturally given by the world to its population. So I just see things in a different way that makes me ask questions, I guess is what I'm saying. So, the differences between, I see people focus on difference all the time, right? So you like that music. Oh, I don't like that music. I like this music. You dress like that. Oh, I dress like this, etc., etc. When the reality is, instead of focusing on the things that divide us, we're all human beings, right? And so there's an equality. There should be, and you will know more than anyone else, there's not an equality, but there should be an equality of the value of life on every single person, regardless of their, beliefs, their hobbies, but it's all human construct, is my point. Yeah. It's all human construct, and it fascinates me. It fascinates me. So if I was inclined or capable from an academic point of view, I would be very drawn to that subject, I think, just to dive into it a bit.
Yeah, and I think especially with international migration, so much of what you've mentioned is there because I'm a qualitative researcher. So that means I don't really deal with large data sets. I don't analyze numbers. I go out, observe the world, observe people, speak to them, do things like focus groups and gather information that way. So I've always been very, let's say, close to my I don't know what to say, how to call them, research participants or research subjects, because I'd even do things like go and work in a factory with them just to see what it's like.
And experience it,
and experience it myself so that I actually know what I'm talking about and I feel what I'm talking about. And everything that you said about these artificial divisions, I mean, it really comes into focus when you're speaking about people coming to a given country for whatever reason, whether it's, to escape repression, whether it's to earn some money because the abundance isn't there in their countries. But these divisions are very much there, aren't they? And this treatment of others, in a disdainful or disrespectful way.
But justified by the human construct. That's what I'm saying.
Justified by this feeling that I'm up here and you're down
that's
there.
What I mean.
And and I think, especially when I think about migration, and we mentioned that earlier, that, my PhD was on these highly educated people who are coming here and working way below their qualifications level. Yeah. Often one of the reasons was because they didn't have much English. And I think even language, that is such an interesting thing, because often you're speaking to somebody who doesn't have enough language to really express themselves.
Communication then is critical.
Communication is critical because if you don't have the language, you can't express how much you know. Yeah. Your value as a person. It's difficult, and I think that's particularly difficult for a lot of people who move, well, let's just say to the UK, and without enough English, they go to work in these low-skilled jobs, right? Because that's the only jobs where they can find employment, despite of their background, despite of their intelligence. And then it can be really, really difficult to work your way up. Of course, there's a group who is more, I can say I'm one of the group, right? That came to work in a high-skilled job, and it's a kind of different category. But but there are plenty of people, really smart people out there who just, came for economic reasons, for example, and just need to, I don't know if I should say accept, but are just faced with this situation of being put down in a way or treated differently, and it's hard.
It must be hard. And again, you can only experience it, I think, to understand it. Right. And so looking from the outside in, you can appreciate it, but I don't think you can truly understand it unless you're in that position. Right. So it makes it difficult. The final question on the kind of research and the academic side for you is that clearly the research, brought conclusions and observations out. Was there anything in that work that looked at possible areas of mitigation or possible solutions to those challenges at a societal level, or was it more kind of specific in terms of addressing that problem with this plaster, and fixing that specific issue, or were you able to look at are there or is there hope in terms of allowing society to operate, think, independent thinking, and apply common sense and logic in a more meaningful way? Was there any of that, or was it just conclusions and observations based on reiterating the differences?
No. Okay. I mean, so there was so a few years back, I actually did a project for the Scottish Parliament on should Scotland introduce an integration strategy for new migrants to the country. And I do still believe, and my answer to that question, based on, of course, research analysis and, speaking to a lot of people, was that, yes, Scotland could do with an integration strategy, because that levels the ground a bit. Because if people coming here are educated as to what to expect, what are the rules in this country? Because you come somewhere, you don't know. No. You learn in practice. Absolutely. Nobody tells you. No. And the further away culturally the people coming in are, the less they understand. Yeah. Because it's a completely different context. And, you might be angry that your neighbor who's from some other country is not taking the rubbish out. But if they don't know they're supposed to be taking the rubbish out, or if it's not within their culture, they need to be kind of educated as well, right? And I just think, and there's, of course, various aspects to that. And one thing that I'm also very often observing is that people come here and are very isolated. And, and you can say, oh, they just stick to each other. Yes, but how are they supposed to get out of that circle if, A, they don't have enough English, B, they're working in factories with other people from their country. I've done a lot of rural research, so research in rural areas in England, in Scotland, and what I kept coming across time and time again was that 90% or more of the workers in a given country or farm were Polish. And then some people were either English or from other countries of Eastern Europe. If you're in that environment, you don't learn English.
Of course.
I've actually interviewed a few Bulgarians, Czech people in Polish, because they didn't have enough English to speak to me. But because they were working among Poles for a number of years,
they picked up the Polish.
They picked up the Polish, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. So I really believe that if we put some systems of support in place and just some places where you can actually build bridges between communities, to help people integrate, because it's not that, some people will never want to, they'll have their culture, they'll just want to be,
of course,
within their culture.
Absolutely.
That's it. There are people like that, and there's no denying that. But many people would like to participate more in the community or in society, but there are a number of barriers. So language can be a barrier. Then you've got a number of people who are working really, really hard, in these factories and so on, 10 hours a day.
So time is the issue there,
time,
right?
And if they've got a family, it's often, minimum wage work. you don't have much money. So basically, you know, it often happens that couples work interchangeably. So one partner works, you know, day shift.
And then that stresses the relationship because there's not a lot of time together.
And there's just not much time for interaction with other people or the community or what have you. And I just believe that if we have these systems in place where people come here and actually are, I don't know, buddied up with someone, given the opportunity to learn English, given the opportunity to learn about the culture, it would change.
This is what drives me mad. I completely agree. This is what drives me mad because, you know, I would almost challenge back and say, and this absolutely isn't a reflection on you. I'm glad that you went through the research to come to that conclusion. But I'm really looking at, you know, bodies, governments, councils, and saying, how do you not reach that conclusion anyway? I mean, what do you need to come to that conclusion? It's so obvious to come to that conclusion, right? Because the benefits of integration and support, mutual support, both ways, for everyone involved. I mean, what do you need here? What do you need? And then then the research gets done. I still don't see any integration, right? Policies, and it's just how you know. I just see this time and time again in many different areas, not just in terms of immigration. People just kicking the can down the road. Kicking the can down the road. Let's keep kicking. And it goes on for centuries, let alone decades. Don't get me started. Anyway, so academic research comes to an end. Don't want to be in that environment anymore because it's stressful, and you've done a long stint, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about the new world then, and what that looks like in terms of the future.
Okay. So I moved very unexpectedly for a lot of people into hypnosis or hypnotherapy. And that came as a surprise to many of my colleagues or people who know me from the research world.
Because it's a bit fluffy, I think. You know, I'm just being candid. From an outsider looking in, anything kind of hypnotherapy related, I think back to kind of stage acts on TV, you know, where you kind of watch the watch and then you go asleep, and then the performer gets the person to do funny things, right? Yeah. So there's almost like a comedic element for me as a layman that doesn't understand the power of hypnotherapy. So, and every single person is different. So I imagine it's impactful for particular traits or particular people, and then maybe not so impactful for others. But so you weren't even involved in it, and suddenly it's a good thing. So tell us that story then.
Okay, so let me backtrack a bit. So I was still in academia, and COVID hit, right? And at the time I was working part-time. I was working in alcohol research, which was great because I read so much about alcohol.
Dangerous.
The dangers of alcohol that I didn't even feel like drinking during COVID.
Wow.
But my point is I had some time because I was working part-time and already, you know, that was a few years back, and I was already feeling tired of working in the academic environment, and I just knew I had to find something else or move into other things, and I couldn't work out what. And that's when COVID hit, and I wasn't in a good space mentally. You know, there were some challenges in my family. Just life was really tough. And that was one reason why I went part-time in the academic world. Okay. I couldn't manage a full-time academic post anymore with what was happening back at home. So, so I was looking, and this is also where the ADHD thing comes in. I was in a loop of negative thinking, ruminating thoughts, and thoughts just going. And when you've got an ADHD, there's no stopping your thinking. I mean, there is, let me backtrack, but it's hard. You need strategies. And, you know, I had a lot of negative thoughts just going ping, 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 ping in my head, you know, 100 thoughts a minute. And I was thinking, right, this is a sink or swim situation. You know, I'm at home. You can't meet up with people, which was always my way of energizing myself and just keeping myself in a positive mood, I guess. And I thought, I need something. I need something to deal with this negative thinking. And I found a course which was called 28 Days to a Positive Mind. Listened to the guy, he was doing a masterclass, listened to him, thought, that sounds really good. And I did the course, which was really, really good. And the guy who ran this course was a hypnotherapist and NLP, so that's neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay.
It's a spin-off of hypnosis. Practitioner. And as part of the course, and I later learned that the whole course was actually based on a therapy method, which is used both in NLP and in hypnosis, which is in NLP, it's called the 6-step reframe, and in hypnosis, it's called parts therapy.
Okay.
And it was really interesting, really good. And as part of the course, he was doing group hypnosis online. I had never come across hypnosis before. Never. I'd never even been to a show. Like, my only association with hypnosis was Scooby-Doo.
Right, there you go.
Scooby-Doo
Right,
films.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and people clucking like chickens.
Exactly.
Because the evil hypnotist hypnotized
you
them.
got it. See, that's
obeying the master and all that stuff, right? But of course,
Okay.
I thought, that's just rubbish, right?
Yeah.
So, but my point is, I had no preconceived ideas at all. It was completely, and I was just, hypnosis online in a group setting.
Why not, right?
Whatever.
Let's go.
I was just open to it because I really liked the stuff the guy was doing and teaching us, and I was thinking, whatever's, So, so I just let myself just tune into the process, basically, and it was completely different than I would have imagined it to be. So basically, it's a process where maybe you teach people to go inward a bit, to really focus on something, and very often you take them through a kind of guided visualization.
Okay.
It's a bit similar to meditation, but maybe the object is a bit different, because in hypnosis you're usually working clinical hypnosis. So I'm talking hypnotherapy at the moment.
Okay.
You're usually working towards solving a problem.
Right.
So some kind of change work, some kind of transformation.
Yeah.
And so we were doing this guided hypnosis session, and I just allowed myself to just, go with the flow, run with it. And I actually went in really deep, and I had this vision, I think, or at least I knew that it was all about, this guided meditation where you go down a path, you go into a garden, and you call in a part of you that you want to speak to. It's all based on this theory that there are different parts of ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Which makes
Absolutely.
absolute sense, right? And if there's a problem, you might need to call in that part that is somehow behind the problem or causing the problem. Just speak to this part. That's. I know it sounds whack.
Yeah.
But it works.
Okay.
And so and in this hypnosis session, a younger version of me came to me. And I would have sworn it was actually visual, which for certain reasons was absolutely amazing. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Yeah. But that experience really freaked me out, to be honest. It really, because I didn't even think that kind of thing is possible.
Right.
And I was thinking, this is fascinating. What is happening in a person's mind during this hypnosis, that these things just come up?
See, that's your research you're getting.
That's
get everything out of the way. What's the answer?
Yeah. I was like, this is absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And I got so interested in hypnosis that I just did and Facebook ads found me.
Yes, of course. So you were bombarded,
Bombarded by all these different, courses and talks about hypnosis. And a lot of the stuff was for free at the time.
Okay.
And so I started listening to different masterclasses. Then I, did a 6-week course, just an introductory course to see what it's about, and a 6-week NLP course. And I was getting more and more intrigued. And I just thought, this is actually fascinating. I want to learn more about it. And I started training in hypnosis. And that's when the challenges started, because I started training in hypnosis, and it suddenly appeared that I'm a really difficult hypnotic subject. So basically, people, I was training with other people, we were all practicing with each other, and the methods we were learning, I would work on the person I was working with, but not on me. And And I got so discouraged that at some point, because I was getting branded this difficult subject, problematic subject. Yeah. And it just completely shook my confidence. And I just left it for some time because I was like, maybe it's not for me, and I just left it. But I was still intrigued, and I remained in the hypnosis circles. And then I asked this lady, a fellow hypnotist from a course, if she could help me overcome a problem. And the interesting thing about her specifically was what attracted me to her was that, well, first of all, she was really experienced. But second of all, she mentioned that she works with autistic people. And I was thinking, okay, I'm not autistic, to the best of my knowledge anyway. But I was thinking, but I know I'm difficult. Yeah. And often autistic people have a different setup than the average person. And you need to work with them differently. And I initially was thinking about, I initially contacted her because I was thinking of help for somebody else, actually, that is autistic. That somebody didn't want the help. And I said to her, well, maybe you'll work with me because I have some problems that I'd really like to overcome. And she did this hypnosis session for me, which lasted 3 hours. It was just bonkers. But she really helped me because she helped me overcome kind of a feeling of grief and guilt after my mum's death. Yep. That was following me around for over 20 years. My mum died when I was 25. I'm 50 now. So that was a long time to be living in this grief and a feeling of guilt that I hadn't managed to save her, She died of cancer. And I was amazed. I was just, my mind was blown. I was thinking 3 hours. 3 hours.
To tackle 25 years of challenge,
tackle 20-something years of an emotional issue.
So this is really important. Let's dive deeper on that. So 3 hours, and all of a sudden you're looking at 25 years worth of emotions that you've been carrying around with you and untangling that, right? Starting to recognize it. So what was the impact then?
The impact was huge because I just started feeling so much lighter and so much more positive, really. And just, when you've got something weighing on your heart somewhere, even if you're not thinking about it or aware of it on a daily basis,
you're
it's
carrying
still
around,
there.
Right? You're carrying
this baggage around, basically. And I have to say, 3 hours is an incredibly long hypnosis session. Okay. Incredibly long. Like, honestly, most people do not do that. Most sessions take about 60 minutes, maybe 90, sometimes faster. My trainers sometimes do a 5-minute session. So it's, but my point is, I was amazed that this can work so quickly, so effectively, and help you with such a big issue. And I was just thinking, I need to explore this further. I need to do this. It's just because I want to help people as well. I know how much it helped me to clear all that stuff. Yeah. And honestly, I had been in therapy for it. There was a number of things I was trying to do to overcome that issue, and it wasn't working. And then one hypnosis session, gone.
So that was the power, and then you thought I need to kind of show others the possibilities here, right? And so you did you train then, and you certified, and now you're delivering hypnotherapy sessions.
Yes. So I went back. I started training with some different trainers. Who are absolutely fantastic.
Was there different approaches, Paulina?
Absolutely. And I think when you start training in whatever, not just hypnotherapy, but when you start training, you kind of learn one way and you think, oh, this is the way. And then as a researcher, I just cannot help myself. I have to have the big picture. I have to have a lot of knowledge, right? Yeah. So I signed up for like a hypno summit. That's what it was called. Wow. And there were all these different people showing all these different methods, and I was like, whoa, so there are so many different ways of doing this. Okay. And there are. Yep. So, there are many, many different ways of doing hypnosis. Some of it people wouldn't even think it's hypnosis. You do hypnosis without a so-called trance, which is a kind of charged concept anyway, and what even is trance? Yeah. But there's just a multitude of methods of doing hypnosis. There is no one method.
And that's true in life for lots of things, right? You can achieve it via a different variety of methods and ways.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me. But I guess the more you learn about the different approaches, the more capable you are of adjusting to your client or patient or whatever. Yeah.
And that brings me on to the aphantasia stuff.
Well, this is
and ADHD stuff.
And this is the primary reason, that I said I've got to get you in the studio. This blew my mind, right? So, and you must get this reaction all the time. So, you talked about aphantasia. I didn't even know how to spell it. Mm-hmm. And let alone what it meant. Mm-hmm. And many other people I talk to say it's a Disney film, right? That's the common answer.
Close.
But so I did a bit of research, which involves Google.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it. I had my eyes completely open. So explain what aphantasia is, and it's something you've always had, and the what percentage of the population has this, and do they realize they have it? And so please just give us a very brief summary of what it is.
Okay, so aphantasia was originally defined as the lack of a mind's eye, or in simpler language, the inability to visualize, to conjure up pictures in your head. So basically it's like, when I think of something, I can think of it, but I cannot, if I close my eyes, I cannot see it. I can think of it, I have a concept of it, but my mind is just blank, right? It's black up there. I cannot see anything.
So that's the bit that I just couldn't. I struggled to accept that was even a possibility.
Well, you can imagine how big a shock I got when I learnt that other people can visualize. I couldn't believe it. And I was 40-something at the time. And I was actually in a therapist's room. And she was asking me about my childhood. And I just drew a blank. I couldn't remember anything. And then she said, well, when you think about your mom, can you see your mom's face? I was like, no. And then she said, okay, can you close your eyes and imagine an apple? And can you see it in your head, and can you turn it around? And I just literally started laughing like a mad woman. And I said to her, of course not. Who can do that? Don't be ridiculous. And she said, about 99% of the population. And I said, what? And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, people see things? Like on a computer screen? They actually, in their heads? You close your eyes, you see things?
It's amazing.
It was the shock of my life. And I think that was back in 2017 or 2018. I'm not sure now, but it was a few years back, right? And I was completely baffled. I was like, nah. And I remember I came back home and I put up a post on Facebook, saying to my friends, okay, guys, I have a question. Close your eyes, imagine an apple, turn it around in your head. What do you see? And most people were like, yeah, an apple, yeah, it's yellow or red or whatever. And somebody said, oh, nothing. And I thought, whoa. And then I started Googling. And I realized that, I came across the term aphantasia, and it was only a concept that was named, it was a condition that was named only in 2015. So it doesn't mean it's not been around. It's just science has not really looked into it.
Wow.
Because most people just assume that other people can visualize. Yeah, but we can't, right? And I have to say, so when it was originally coined in 2015, it was just described as the lack of visual ability, right?
Okay, yeah.
But research has shown, and that's my experience as well, that most aphantasics don't have mental imagery across more than one sense. So when I try to imagine things, I cannot see anything, but also I cannot imagine a sense of touch. I can't hear things in my head. I can't reproduce music or voices in my head. I can't reproduce smells. So for me, it cuts across all senses. It's not just the visual.
See, that's new information today. I didn't even realise that. I genuinely thought it was just visual. So it actually crosses senses. That's
crosses
incredible.
Senses. And what I found really, and that is the main reason why I found it so difficult to go into hypnosis.
Of course, because that involves visualization, right? To an extent.
Not always.
Okay.
And it really depends on how you are trained, and it really depends on your own abilities as a therapist, basically. But I was trained in highly visual methods, and I was trained in methods that involved things like so-called phenomena. So you suggest to somebody that, for example, that your arm is stiffening. It's so stiff that you can't bend it. Yeah. And a lot of people, if you suggest it to them, they really feel it, and they can't bend their arm. Yeah. I can always bend my arm. I can always open my eyes. I can't, there were just these things that made me difficult because it just didn't resonate with me. I just couldn't do it. And it was so discouraging. But as I said, after the hypnosis session I just thought, never mind, just get over yourself, woman. Just train in this. Yeah. The fact that you can't experience it the way others do doesn't mean that you can't help others.
Absolutely, 100%.
But during my training, I was becoming more and more vocal about, okay, so I can't do this. Yep. Are there any workarounds, or how would you work with me, or whatever? And the more I started speaking up, the more other people from the training started.
This is the key. Yeah.
Getting in touch with me, saying, "I'm the same. Yeah. I'm the same." And I thought, "Whoa! So it's not just me. So there's more of us." And that kind of being a researcher, I couldn't help myself. I thought, this is a research project. So I started my own kind of passion research into aphantasia and hypnosis with an object of finding out how to best work with people who cannot visualize. Because I kind of noticed that I thought, this is a gap. This is a gap in our training.
Of course it is.
This is a gap in the knowledge.
And 1%-ish of the population?
No, it's more.
It's more.
So when the term was coined in 2015, they said 1% of the population has it. Now, they're saying it's closer to 4%, around 4%.
That's huge.
Personally,
you think it's more?
I believe it's much more.
Because you wouldn't have been part of those statistics prior to recent.
I mean, the thing is, the thing is with the statistics, how you do it is basically you survey a group of people and test them, right? In this case, test them. Yeah. But the thing is, I keep coming across people who say, "Oh, that's me," and I'm thinking it's impossible. It's statistically impossible, but I keep coming across the 4 in 100 that are saying, this is me,
I
right?
get you. So which is why your inclination is it's higher than that?
I think it's higher because another thing is aphantasia is a neurodivergence. Okay. It's a so-called neutral neurodivergence. Okay. So it's not seen as an impairment or some kind of medical condition. Yeah. But research has shown, and I'm observing this more and more, that it's often related with other neurodivergencies. So if you have autism, there's research on this that there's a higher propensity among autistic people to have aphantasia or some other imagery extreme, because it can be the other way around, hyperphantasia, where you see almost like in real life, right? And I can see this very clearly among people who have ADHD, like me. That's another thing I discovered very late in life, during COVID as well.
So let's come on to ADHD, but before we do that, on the aphantasia, you're going to go and talk, are you, specifically about that topic at a conference soon?
Yes. So I'm doing this research with a group of aphantasic hypnotherapists, which is probably the most difficult group I could have chosen because they know exactly what I'm doing.
But if you can do that, you can do anything after that.
Well, that's my hope. And I'll be talking about aphantasia and hypnosis at this year's UK Hypnosis Convention in London in November, which I'm rather proud of, to be honest.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah, because I've not been in the field of hypnosis for that long. Yeah. But I do believe that I have quite unique skills in that profession, because I have both a very strong scientific background and then I'm a certified hypnotherapist. So I know how to do this stuff. I'm a practitioner, right? So I kind of bring, and when I started doing the research, I didn't come to it from a research point of view, from an academic point of view. I came to it through practice, from a practitioner's point of view, which actually makes a huge difference.
and that's utopia, isn't it? Being able to kind of take in the research, but also live and breathe it as well, right? Through experience. And I think those two worlds together are probably the most powerful way of taking it forward.
I think so. And I've always, going back to academia, I've always felt as a bit of a non-academic academic. Okay. Because I was much more interested in the practical applications of my research. I was interested in the research, analysis, practical applications of my research, rather than the theories. Yes. I have to say, the theories would do my head in.
Fair enough. So ADHD then. ADHD. So this is this one of those things that goes with the neurodivergence?
Yeah.
Okay.
So ADHD is a neurodivergence as well. Yeah. The same as autism or dyslexia or aphantasia.
Yep.
And as I said, my mid-late 40s have been full of surprises. A lot of things that I learnt about myself that I had no idea about. And ADHD was one of these things. And I wasn't looking for a diagnosis or whatever, but there were always some things in my life I struggled with. And then I kept getting this feedback throughout my life that I'm unique or weird or different. And when I was a kid, I was thinking, it's probably because I grew up in two countries, because I live in a communist country, but I speak fluent English and I have a British passport. It was a very unique situation to be in. So I kind of always thought that's why I've got a different surname, But I was getting these off-the-cuff comments from time to time in my life, and they would really stick with me. It was things like, Paulina, you always choose the hardest way to do things. Or, Paulina, you always start from the wrong side. Or, or I still remember this situation a few years back when I was still in academia and I just had too much on. At that point in time, I was panicking and I went to my boss and I said, I don't know what to do first. I don't know what to do. I've got this, and this, which needs to be done. And I've still got this presentation that I need to prepare for this conference tomorrow. And she looked at me and she said, why do you... And I said, I need to prepare the analysis for it. Or, and she said, Paulina, why do you want to prepare the analysis for it? Like, you wrote a paper on this subject a few years back. And I looked at her and I thought, oh my God. This woman remembers, she didn't even know me at the time. She just knows what I've written. She remembers I wrote a paper on this very subject. And I don't, even though I wrote it myself. And it was such a shock to me. And I remember she looked at me and she said, I wish I could be inside your head just for one day, just to see what it's like.
Just to see what it's like.
And it was just these things that made me realize that I'm somehow different, but I couldn't put my finger on why am I different? What is it that's different about me? And then there were just these things where I knew I was very clever, right, objectively, and capable on the one hand. I mean, I'd managed to do 2 masters and a PhD, so I can't be stupid. Yeah. But on the other hand, I couldn't manage simple things that other people don't have an issue with managing. So things like organizing my files, structuring my time, just
as in
tidying my house.
Those are difficult things.
Those are really difficult things for me. And it was a bit, I didn't want to own up to them, I guess, for many years, because I just thought, I'm just a bit stupid.
As in you thought it would negatively reflect?
Yeah, because especially as when you're at this level, working at this level in a high... At a high level, in a way, in a respected profession, you're expected.
There's an expectation.
There's an expectation that you can handle these things. Like, what's difficult about organising
if you
your
can do
folders?
This
if you
easy,
can do complex
right?
analysis, why can't you organise your folders? Like, there's just this assumption. And I didn't know I had ADHD, right? And then one day I came across this post in a Facebook group for academic women, it so happens. And the poster was writing like, those of you who have ADHD in academia, how do you manage this, and this? Because I find it really difficult. And I read through, the things that she mentioned, and I thought, that's interesting. That is 100% me. And then people started posting articles below that post, this article about ADHD in women, and this article, and this test. And the more I started reading, I was like, oh.
But so what was the sense? What was the overriding emotion at that point? Was it relief that you could now explain to yourself some of the traits and the behaviors, or was it anxiousness?
No, absolutely not. No. I was so relieved. I was so relieved because I realized, and a lot of my negative thinking came from this: you should be doing better. You should be able to do this. Why are you so stupid?
Self-critical.
Self-critical. Why are you so lazy? Why are you so stupid? Why is your house a mess? And it's not that I'm still not questioning why is my house a mess, but I kind of understand now that my brain works differently. And there are just things where I need to be a bit, easier on myself because I've managed quite well in life anyway, right?
Yeah.
Which turned out to be a bit of a barrier when I was seeking an ADHD diagnosis, actually. The fact that I was seen as successful and very intelligent. But that's a bit of another topic, how the diagnostic process works. But the thing for me was it was just such a relief. And then I joined a number of ADHD groups and was like, whoa, there are other women like me. We're struggling with exactly the same things. They're as wacky as me. This is great.
That must have helped, right? Honestly, the kind of camaraderie around shared experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now, now that I know, in hindsight, it explains so much of my life and of my life choices and professional choices as well.
So the big question that I have then is, and I remember putting a post around my own achievements the other day on the running side. I ran an ultra for the first time, which I'm mentioning a lot at the moment because it's recent history, and I'm really proud. Thank you. But I noticed your comment back was, when I was reflecting on that, is kind of, the midlife crisis, the new you.
Yeah.
What stuck in my mind is those realizations that you went through and the explanations that you suddenly understood that explained a lot of your life up to that point.
Yeah.
Did you also feel like actually the chains were off and you were able to move forward in a much more authentic and free manner with kind of your life forward? Because if that is the case, that assumption's right, then my goodness, I mean, that must have felt phenomenal.
It did, because I didn't even realize there's a lot of shame when you have ADHD. There's a lot of feelings of shame because you always... You know that you're different. And even if because ADHD is a spectrum, right?
Okay.
So not everybody is the same as me. There's some people really have very, they even find it difficult to get the same pair of shoes on rather than not two different shoes.
Okay.
ADHD really is a spectrum.
Okay.
And, for some people, some traits are stronger, some are weaker, some are just missing.
Yeah.
But I'm one of the examples of, let's just say, gifted women, right?
Yeah.
Women who are very intelligent, who are seen as successful, who have achieved a lot in their lives in one way.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I always felt like such a failure because, I was very successful academically. And I think that's why I studied for so many years. Because when you're studying, there's a structure. All you need to do is follow the structure, do your work, turn work in, which I didn't always do on time, but that's another thing. Perfectionism. I've always been very perfectionistic, which is also often an ADHD trait, which I didn't realize. But the thing was, I had a structure and I was following a structure. And I sometimes think that, as I said, I never knew, why did I actually want to do a PhD? I mean, nobody in my family has a PhD. I was the first person in my family to have higher education, but I always had this ambition. And now in hindsight, I'm thinking, was it to prove to myself that I'm not stupid? Because I always had this feeling that I'm stupid in some way,
Yeah.
And I think with this feeling of failure, so people would see me as successful because educationally I was successful. I was working as an academic. It's not an easy job, not everybody gets a PhD.
Yeah.
But I was feeling like this huge failure because other parts of my life weren't as successful, or other areas of my life weren't as successful, and financially I wasn't successful. I never had money, and I was thinking, how is it possible that I am so intelligent?
Yeah.
I know so much. I have such skills, and I'm not making money. How is it even possible?
Yeah.
And now I kind of understand, because people with ADHD are also often quite idealistic. We're the visionaries, the big thinkers, the people who are very much mission driven. Maybe practical things like savings, budgeting
doesn't come so
organizing
easy, right?
your finances doesn't come so easy.
So it feels like you're in a place which is a really good place, actually, and that it sounds like, I don't know whether this sounds good or bad, but it almost sounds like you've given yourself permission now to be you.
I've given myself permission to be weird.
And acceptance, right? Acceptance that you're all of those things, and that's okay, right? This is the point. Exactly. That's okay. So I want to close in terms of just asking you what the future looks like. What you come out of that world, you're practicing hypnotherapist now, you're speaking at conferences. I mean, this is all very back to your old world. This is all putting you on a pedestal, right? But what does the future look like in terms of ambition and direction of travel for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have big ambitions and big visions.
Really?
But
okay.
Yes. But with ADHD, it's always like, okay, the vision is big. How do you break it down?
You got to control
How do you
it.
get there?
Yeah.
But basically, I called my company No Woo Woo.
Okay.
Because I know that a lot of people perceive hypnotherapy as really woo woo, but so kind of, non-scientific and so on. But I have never been this person who's, I am very much evidence-based.
Yes.
I'm a scientist at heart.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't go for, I don't know, I'm not somewhere up there with the fairies, right? So I believe that things that are tested, tried and tested, and that's one of the messages I want to get out there into the world, because we don't get down to discussing this. There's too many different things. Yeah. That's rambling is an ADHD thing as well. But you mentioned earlier that, most people, when they think of hypnosis, they think of stage hypnosis and just doing stuff for fun and clucking like chickens and so on. And it has its place on the stage, right? But when we're talking about hypnotherapy or clinical hypnosis, you have no interest in people clucking. And the thing is, if you're a stage hypnotist, you select people who are highly suggestible. I wouldn't go on stage. Nobody would work with me on stage because I'm not a good subject in that way. Too unpredictable. Right? Predictable. I'll do nothing. So, and people have to be up for the fun. So the one big message I do want to put out there is that you cannot hypnotize somebody against their will. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to take part in this, whether it's stage hypnosis or if it's, coming to a hypnotherapist to make a change in your life. Yeah. You have to be willing to take part in the process. It's not like me taking control over your mind and doing stuff. I sometimes wish it was, because then we'd sort everybody out, no problem. Yeah. You really need to want to change your behavior, change things in your life, and then we can work kind of directly with your emotions and help you. But sorry, I'm kind of going off topic again. So your question was about plans. Okay. So I want to build a company, so no woo-woo, because I want to build on my academic background. Yeah. And show people that hypnosis is as good a therapy method as any other, or actually, I think it's much better, to be honest. Okay. And I won't say it works 100% for everyone, because no therapy method works for everyone, always. But honestly, my experience is that it is so much more effective than many other therapy methods, because you're kind of speaking, I know this might sound a bit woo-woo, but we all know that we do have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, 100%. Something that runs certain, patterns that we might not even be aware of. And if you're connecting directly with that part of your brain, with the emotions, you can really change things quickly. And what I want to do in general is, first of all, popularize hypnotherapy. Okay. Yeah. And second of all, strengthen the field by bringing the research into it more from a practitioner's point of view. Right? No woo-woo. Let's test things, Love it. And I really want to make hypnotherapy accessible to people who are a bit different like me, to people who are neurodivergent. Yeah. Because I know that we roll in a bit of a different way. And especially my own experience as somebody who has aphantasia, so can't visualize, ADHD, so I'm a bit fidgety, and also SDAM, which is severely deficient autobiographical memory, which means I remember very little from the past. Goodness. And if somebody tries regression methods with me, like going back to the childhood, hypnosis or not, I can't remember anything. Okay. I remember hardly anything, no specific situations. So that's where I see myself or the company going in the future. At the moment, I'm focusing on one-to-one hypnotherapy. I help people mainly with anxiety, building confidence, self-acceptance. Great. I have a particular kind of passion for working with people who are neurodivergent because I know life's a bit more difficult for us because of the messages we get from the society about trying to fit in and so on. So helping those people gives you more
I guess, fundamental pleasure from helping those people. But you're not just about helping those people.
No,
you're just about
no.
anyone who can see value in it.
Yeah.
You'd encourage them to come forward, but they must be in a position, I guess, to be open to change, right?
Yes.
That's the key bit.
Yeah. Or another thing I do is, because I kind of like mixing working with the subconscious with working with the conscious mind, because I do see value in that. And, I know how much it helped me to get out of these negative thinking loops.
Yes.
So that's another thing I do. I call it mindset coaching, which I don't know if it's the best term, but that's what I do. Help people overcome negative thinking. And I'll soon start organizing workshops, online workshops on overcoming negative thinking, also on things like overcoming anxiety, calming your mind, and workshops aimed at hypnotherapists on how to work with people who cannot visualize.
Love that.
So that's kind of in the near future, and in the further future, we shall see where this crazy road takes me.
That's the exciting bit. So we've run out of time for today, but I can't thank you enough for coming in. I think we've touched on so many topics that I'm sure there'll be another Paulina out there that suddenly goes, hold on.
That's me.
Penny drop, right? So wish you all the best. I'll put the contact details for you at the bottom of anything that we post so that people can get directly in touch and ask for help. But thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for the invitation and letting me put this out into the world.
Good stuff.